Hello and welcome to the Global Poker League and our new segment where we ask our guest pro to take us through a key hand from the GPL. I'm joined by Jonathan Little of the Las Vegas Moneymakers. He's going to take us through a hand between his teammate Jake Cody and the San Francisco Rush's Jonathan Jaffe. We see aces in the hands of one of our players in this hand. Jonathan, take it away.
All right, so Jonathan Jaffe gets a pretty good hand. Pocket aces, that's exactly what you want in any form of poker.
Yes.
So he's gonna make a raise, and then Jake Cody decides to re-raise this 9-6 suited. And that may seem quite aggressive, but this is an okay hand to re-raise because when your opponent does call, often they're gonna have big cards, right? So your opponent's not gonna necessarily give you credit for a low or middle card flop whenever you re-raise them. So hands to re-raise as a bluff that are good ones to re-raise are hands that your opponent will not expect. And that's gonna be kind of bad suited connector-ish type hands, also off-suited connectors, and then just some absolute garbage like Jack 4 offsuit if you feel like it. So now Jonathan Jaffe, known for his very creative play, he is going to min re-raise, which I'm not sure if he's doing this as a bluff ever or if he's doing this primarily for value. I would not be the least bit surprised if Jonathan Jaffe has a hand like 5-3 suited some portion of the time because that's how he rolls.
He's very keen for Jake not to be blown off the hand in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, the issue with that is that you have to make sure that it's not obvious to Jake Cody that you have a premium hand. Because if it's obvious to him that you have a premium hand, then Jake Cody's going to play well. But Jonathan Jaffe can get away with this stuff because he's been seen enough times impersonating a dolphin trainer and doing other things silly to the point that he could just be getting crazy and mixing it up. So he does re-raise the minimum. And now Jake Cody, notice we see here, is going to win 19% of the time. And he has to put in only 3,500 to win what's going to be a 16,000 pot. So he's getting the right price to call from out of position. The problem is that even though he's going to win 19% of the time, he's not going to realize that much equity most likely, meaning that he's going to have to fold hands that have some equity some portion of the time on average. But here, Jonathan Jaffe just has him crushed. So fantastic flop for Jonathan Jaffe. This is a spot where he definitely wants to do everything in his power to get Jake Cody to stick around. So how do you get someone to stick around on 8-3-3 when they have 9-6 suited?
Check back the flop.
You check back the flop. That's exactly it. There's probably some merit for Jonathan Jaffe to bet very small, like 2,000. I think that would be a pretty sweet play. This is a spot where Jonathan Jaffe should have an incredibly strong range. So maybe betting small is okay, but he does just check it back. And that lets Jake Cody
pick up a flush draw.
This is a card that could certainly get him in a lot of trouble. I would be interested to know if Jake Cody could ever have a hand like pocket queens or pocket eights here. I think he probably could. So he can certainly represent some premium hands. It's like he's only bluffing in this spot. But I think it's a pretty nice spot to go for a bluff. I mean, what are you going to do? You have 9 high. If you're ever trying to win this pot, you have to go for it. But at the same time, if you think your opponent just has aces, then you probably don't want to be going for it. Interestingly, this 9-6 somehow beats a few of Jonathan Jaffe's bluffs that I think he may have in his range, like 5-2 suited, that he decided to give up with. So if it somehow ever checks down, maybe 9 high wins, but that's not happening too often. Because Jonathan Jaffe's most likely going to turn the 5-2 into a bluff at some point. So you're not going to get to realize your equity. So Jake Cody being very deliberate, giving it some thought.
Remember when Jake was giving his rationale for this turn bet, he was sort of slightly doubting whether there were too many hands Jonathan Jaffe could re-raise with pre-flop and then check back. But he likes to go with the bet anyway.
Right, because maybe Jonathan Jaffe does bluff with stuff like 5-2 before the flop, but he's going to bet the flop with it a lot of the time because he can't win at showdown either. But maybe he decides to play it as he would play aces, which means check back the flop and then get frisky with it later. All right, so Jonathan Jaffe now definitely wants to call. If he raises, what can Jake Cody really call with besides maybe a queen or better, and you're going to stack a queen anyway? He does give Jake Cody the opportunity to outdraw him some portion of the time whenever he happens to have a random flush draw or a hand like Jack 10 that rivers a straight. But that's okay. He realizes Jake Cody has relatively little equity. Whatever hand he has, he's already priced himself out with this 10,000 bet into the 16,000 pot. So Jonathan Jaffe just wants to stick around and call. And notice this is a spot where maybe Jonathan Jaffe plays a hand like ace-king in this manner. Maybe he plays a hand like pocket sevens in this manner. This is a pretty rough river for Jake Cody because now he could easily have a hand like pocket jacks or queens or eights. There are actually a decent amount of hands that he could have at this point. I'm not sure if he should go for a bluff just because it seems very likely to me that Jonathan Jaffe has a strong hand. But if you think Jonathan Jaffe has a lot of ace-kings in his range, maybe it's fine just to go for it because he's probably going to fold on the river at this point. The thing is that Jake Cody, if he did have a hand like a jack, he'd probably just check the river. And if he had a queen here, he may even check the river then too, because maybe Jonathan Jaffe doesn't call with a hand like pocket tens. I mean, this is a convoluted hand because there's a minimum 4-bet pre-flop. It's important to always go back to the pre-flop action and really try to narrow ranges. And who knows what's happening in this hand, because Jonathan Jaffe may be just incredibly strong, or he may have a bunch of bluffs in his range. But by the time we get to the river, I don't know if Jonathan Jaffe ever has 5-2 suited in his range by this river ever. So it looks like a nice spot to bluff for Jake Cody. He could certainly have the nuts here with queens or jacks, but I'm just not sure it's a good idea because I think Jonathan Jaffe's calling a lot on the river. So
Jake decides to open the clip, and I don't think this was a decision that Jonathan Jaffe took too long over.
No, I think it's a pretty easy call. Notice here, he knows when he checks behind this flop, he's never folding. So that's the spot where he went for it. And it did not work out too well for the moneymakers.
Well, that's all for this particular hand, guys. Thank you to Jonathan Little. Join us again next time. Adios.
Connect with us on social media for league updates and download our app GPL TV to stay on top of everything GPL.